Skip Bayless has been known to get carried away through the years in his robust thirst for relevance and for viewers and for eyeballs and clicks and all of those good things. And so Skip Bayless in the news for the first time in a while with some thoughts that he offered about Caitlin Clark and Caitlin Clark's meteoric rise to celebrity and fame that has occurred over the course of the last couple of years. And Skip Bayless introducing race into that conversation himself in this context. Rather than have me attempt to describe it, let's listen to the man himself and what he had to say about Caitlin Clark and his thoughts about how race has played a role in her popularity.
So here came this white girl from Iowa, and I started watching the WNBA much more closely than I ever had, and I started to think, deep down in my psyche, wait a second, she's really good. But I'll be the first to admit, I felt guilty saying so on TV or on social media. I did not want to look like this red state white guy cheering for this red state white girl. Our country feels split enough racially already. I didn't want to pour gasoline on that fire. Maybe I was wrong about this, but Caitlin Clark started to feel like, to me, some sort of new right-wing symbol. White woman dominating the game, dominated by black men and women for years and years. I could almost hear some people thinking, white power, baby. And please, I'm not saying Caitlin Clark is far right in her politics or beliefs. I have no idea what her politics or religion are because she has carefully, and I say smartly, avoided taking any rookie year stands because she's already such a lightning rod.
Well, there's Skip Bayless talking about how as a white guy from a red state, he was concerned about extolling the virtues of a white girl from a red state. He didn't want to pour gasoline on the fire, is how he characterized it. And he said that he thought that some people might have even been thinking, he could almost hear a certain segment of society saying, white power, baby. Those, the direct words of Skip Bayless that you just heard from that video. It seems ridiculous to me. I'm a white guy from a traditionally red state, Kentucky. I've got an accent too. And so I can relate better than some to where he's coming from. When I first came to Chicago to be a college professor over 20 years ago, I knew that I was walking into a much more diverse environment in the Chicago college classroom than I would have had if I'd stayed in Kentucky. I knew that I was going to be teaching students of all kinds of different backgrounds, both racially, ethnically, religiously. And I thought, what might their preconceptions be of me? This country-sounding, southern white guy coming into the classroom to try and teach them about sociology. What does he know about sociology? So I get it to an extent, but Skip Bayless has been on TV for fucking ever. He's 72 years old. Skip Bayless has been around the block, back around the block again, circled back around the block a third time, and you just wish that he would fucking go away. We're long past, for a lot of us, the just wanting Skip Bayless to go away. And if I'm going to be cynical, I kind of wonder if he really means this. Because that is where Skip Bayless has taken his career. He's made millions and millions of dollars doing it, but I question the sincerity of pretty much everything he says, because I don't know if he's saying it because he means it or if he's saying it because he wants clicks. And he wants articles to be written about him. And he wants people like me to come out and talk about him. Is this Skip Bayless desperately flailing for relevancy? Is he doing it for attention? Or did he really mean it? Because Skip, you've been out there in the world for a long time. And I will say I'm not your biggest fan, but I've never thought that you were a racist. Is that a rap that has ever been on Skip Bayless? I'm not aware of it if it is. Maybe he's gotten that at some point and he's sensitive because of it. I've thought that Skip Bayless was being sensational for the sake of being sensational. I thought that he was offering up opinions on TV that were just hot takes generated like a carnival barker looking for attention. And as I've said on this program many times, it's not what I'm going to do here. I'm never going to make as much money as Skip Bayless. But I'm not going to play that game either. At least when you watch this program, you're going to know that whatever I'm telling you is what I really think. I'm not here to bullshit anybody. Skip Bayless has been bullshitting for years and years and years, and it's a well-known fact that that's the case. Here's where I'm going to come on this issue. I like people who are awesome. I had the same experience that Skip Bayless did with Caitlin Clark in terms of being transfixed by her ability. Like a whole lot of us, I saw this woman doing things on the basketball court that I had never seen a woman do on a basketball court before. We talked on this show about a week ago. Her average three-point distance this year in WNBA games is longer than Steph Curry's. We say that she's got Steph Curry range. Maybe Steph Curry has Caitlin Clark range. Did you ever think in your life you'd be talking about a woman that had equal range to Steph Curry on a basketball court? So Caitlin Clark, I've said it before, she was like a needle moving across the record player. Everything stopped and I was like, who the fuck is she? So Skip Bayless, I relate to you on that. What I don't relate to is how somebody who has been in the public eye for as long as you have been, who has extolled the virtues of black athletes and non-white athletes for years, would possibly think really that because you acknowledge awesome as awesome, you're somehow contributing to some kind of white supremacist segment of society, pouring gasoline on a fire, as Skip Bayless says it. Look, I'll tell you something about me. I got a lot less money and I got a lot less years of reputation publicly than Skip Bayless. But I will tell you, Caitlin Clark is my favorite. She's not just my favorite female basketball player. She's the only one that I'm really highly, highly interested in. But I can name more other WNBA players now than I could before she came along. That's for damn sure. So she's helping everybody in that regard. I didn't know who Asia Wilson was last year. I couldn't have told you her name. She's going to win her third WNBA MVP award. I didn't know who she was a year ago. So I at least now have an appreciation of her talents. Caitlin Clark is to thank for that. My favorite basketball player of all time is Larry Bird, and my favorite current NBA player is Luka. That's pretty white, coming from a white guy with a southern accent. But all those people are undeniably awesome, aren't they? I also grew up idolizing George Gervin and Julius Erving. My favorite baseball player when I was a kid, I'm well documented, was Reggie Jackson. I idolized Reggie Jackson when I was a child, like almost no one else. But the athlete that I have idolized the most during my entire life, and I'm on the record with this many, many times over, anybody who knows me knows the answer to this, my favorite athlete of all time was a black Muslim. Muhammad Ali, as you probably assumed. I like people who are awesome. Caitlin Clark is awesome. Larry Bird's awesome. Luka's awesome. Muhammad Ali was awesome. Reggie Jackson was awesome. Julius Erving was awesome. I got a signed Magic Johnson jersey hanging on my wall. I like people who are awesome. Never apologize for liking somebody who's awesome. Speaking of awesome, let's take a look at Caitlin Clark. Hitting a baseball. Look at that. Perfect. Apparently she just does everything right. I'm talking about wrestling on this show later today with Double J Jeff Jarrett. Kurt Hennig in the WWE years ago was known as Mr. Perfect, and his gimmick was that he could do everything well. Maybe Caitlin Clark is Ms. Perfect, because it seems like everything she does well. And speaking of things that she's done well, take a look at this. This is shocking. When I first saw this list, these are the most watched games on NBA TV over the course of this past year. 5 of the 10 are Caitlin Clark games. When I first looked at this, I thought it was the 10 most viewed WNBA games. And I was like, what the fuck? Only half of them are Caitlin Clark games? That doesn't seem possible. Holy shit. Then I looked at it more closely and I realized this includes the NBA too. Half of the top 10 most viewed games on NBA TV, men's game or women's game, have been Caitlin Clark games, including the top 2 and including the top 3 out of 4. You don't have to apologize for liking that white girl from Iowa, because we don't like her because she's from Iowa. We don't like her because she's white. We like her because she's fucking awesome. And speaking of fucking awesome, the man who could Wally Pip Ronnie t-shirts today, for all I know, joining me now from Las Vegas, the great Dave Ross. And Dave, Caitlin Clark is just off the charts. Everything that she's done to move the needle. Who's the last athlete that came along and sort of just rose from obscurity to complete relevance as quickly as Caitlin Clark has?
Ricky, it's great to be with you. Ronnie, just keeping the seat warm for you, brother. That's all I'm doing here with you today on this Friday, Ricky. You know, I think you mentioned it. It's kind of for me, and I was in Chicago, ironically, when I was doing this show, is when Steph Curry leaving Davidson, going to Golden State. And back then, if people remember, the Clippers were kind of all the rave, and that was going to be the next team out west. And I'm watching this kid that's supposed to be, he was a top 10 pick. So Steph Curry was regaled as a really good player coming into the NBA. But I don't think we saw him transfixing the NBA and kind of our eyeballs to watching Steph Curry become this just elite all-time three-point shooter to, a decade plus later, we look at him and go, well, he's just the greatest shooter the game has ever seen. I didn't see that coming. And I remember doing shows back then in Chicago with like Antoine Walker. Antoine Walker's won NBA championships, won a championship at Kentucky. And I remember saying back then, like, man, this guy is kind of changing the game. And he kind of looked at me funny, like you really believe that? And I'm like, well, I've never seen a shooter like this before. And I think now even the Antoine Walkers of the world go, yeah, he really has kind of changed the way we watch basketball. And I think to your point, Ricky, that's what we're seeing with Caitlin Clark. We just haven't seen a woman be able to step back with the range that she has. And that captivates us. Certainly somebody like me that, I could never post anybody up. So I'm trying to shoot from deep. So when I watch Steph come in doing it from Davidson, middle school at Davidson, and then do it at the highest level in the world. And then we saw Caitlin Clark do it at Iowa, and we went, well, that's great. Let's see if she can do it at the next level. And then she does it at the next level. That's going to get eyeballs. There's something about it, man. There's something about being able to take it, when you cross half court and you're basically open at that point. That's Steph. That's Caitlin Clark. I think it's a great comparison, and I love the way you phrased it. She's awesome. Steph's awesome. We love to watch great athletes at the highest level to be able to do it. I don't care, rookie year, second year, like Steph did. It's awesome to watch. And to me, that was kind of the evolution of Steph Curry. Didn't see it coming, but when it started to happen, you went, wow, is this guy with 2 bad ankles really the best shooter we've ever seen on the planet? Kind of fragile guy? Yeah, that's Steph Curry. And I think we're seeing it with Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, people get mad at me sometimes because, as I've said, my favorite player of all time, basketball, is Larry Bird. But Steph Curry is the greatest shooter that God ever put on this planet.
Absolutely.
All respect to Larry Bird, who is Larry Bird. But Steph Curry, it's absolutely ridiculous. We saw the way that he put the gold medal game to bed. He just does things that over time we've come to expect it. We've come to think, okay, well, that's just Steph doing Steph things. But before Steph Curry, a lot of these things were not really stuff that you saw, that you anticipated. And it's very true, Dave. Thank you for reminding us all, because you were absolutely right when you said that to Antoine Walker, because we've just kind of grown accustomed to it over the last 10 or 12 years or whatever it's been, this incredible career that he's had. But before Steph Curry, a lot of this stuff we really just had never seen before.
Yeah, and shout out to my guy Antoine, because the big fella would tell me, like, people forget I was the original stretch four, right? Like, we didn't see big guys like Antoine Walker stepping out and shooting threes. Now everybody does it, right? So when you're seeing it for the first time, like we saw it then with Steph in the ultimate range, you go, well, come on, is this? I can understand where he was coming from. Like, is this really sustainable? And again, I think that was the question with Caitlin Clark. Like, okay, great at Iowa. Can she really do this with the physicality of the league? We saw the cheap shots she's taken all year in the WNBA, and she just gets up and shoots it deeper. So, yeah, it is sustainable when you have awesomeness, as you phrased it, with a Steph Curry, with the Caitlin Clark, and I don't care what the color is. I'm going to watch it because it's spectacular to watch.
Absolutely. And speaking of Antoine Walker, thank you for 1996.
No.
Antoine Walker, on behalf of this Kentucky boy, you know?
Ricky, I'm a Syracuse guy, and I told Antoine, you made a young grown man cry in 1996 with that super team Kentucky had that year. You guys had everything, Ricky. Like, we had nothing. We had John Wallace in 96, and you guys had a super team there for Kentucky. Antoine was unbelievable.
Loaded. Absolutely loaded in 96. That we needed that one after the Christian Laettner shot in 92, Dave.
You did.
That was the state desperately needed. We needed it worse than you did. You had Carmelo not long after, though, so you were okay. David, to switch gears here to something that's a lot less pleasant to talk about, Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah. Man, all right. Now I'm just going to call him Tua, like all the rest of us do all the time after butchering that. Another scary concussion last night after he collided with, of all people, Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills, who obviously gave us maybe the scariest moment that any of us have ever seen on an NFL field. This time he was on the better end of that collision that we had last night. Scary stuff, man. Tua going into that, what they call the fencing position that your body involuntarily goes into after a traumatic brain injury. Sometimes we saw it a couple of years ago in a game against the Bengals. Mm-hmm. This is two times now in 2 years, less than 2 years, that Tua has suffered a really, really scary looking injury. I don't want to be the guy who jumps to conclusions because I sit here and tout myself as somebody who doesn't do that. But man, Dave, I think he's got to start thinking about his long-term future. And at 26 years old, is it really a good idea to continue playing?
Totally a fair question, Ricky. And I know that your all-time favorite athlete is Muhammad Ali. And like, I'm that guy too. I don't retire athletes ever. Like you mentioned greatness. I want to watch greatness as long as we can. Not saying that Tua is great or an all-time great, but like you saw Muhammad Ali at the end of his career against Larry Holmes, and you went, man, I just don't want to see this anymore. Like, you don't want to see your greats getting beat up like that. And Tua is a young man. He just signed that 212, I think, 0.4. Don't forget the $0.4 million contract here for 4 years. It's fully guaranteed. So you could say, well, why does he need the game, right? He doesn't need the game now because all that money's guaranteed. He gets it regardless if he plays or if he doesn't. So I get all of that. And I think that's the human element that you're bringing into it, Ricky, where you go, like, we feel for you. We're empathetic. And as human beings, we want you to be healthy and we want you to live a long and prosperous life. But the reason why I never retire athletes, whether it's because of performance or age or, or injury, is because that could be their life. Like, I don't know what makes Tua tick. I don't know if I have to be on that football field leading a team, and that's part of my, of who I am. And if I don't do that, then I feel like I'm not leading my life to the fullest, right? I mean, I joined the Marine Corps and put myself potentially in harm's way, and you kind of know that going in when you sign up for something like that. And I've talked to thousands of athletes through my life, and I love those conversations because I can't do what they do, and to know what they are doing, what they voluntarily put their bodies through to entertain us. I mean, it's a lot, and they know that going in, and Tua knows that. So, like, I would sit here today, and I get the national reaction is going to be he shouldn't play anymore, and I understand that. But if he gets cleared by the doctors, if he feels like he is okay to do it, I bet he's back out there on that field. Because that's the way these guys are wired to a degree. Like, I'd be more surprised, Ricky, if we never see Tua Tagovailoa on a football field again versus seeing him back out there. And you mentioned it was with Damar Hamlin. I mean, how ironic is that? That literally Tua, by the way, put his helmet into the chest of Damar Hamlin, which is exactly what happened to Damar Hamlin, which we saw a year and a half ago against the Bills, where we thought he might die on the field. I mean, it's bizarre that it happened to be those two guys, and Damar Hamlin's back out there, right? So if Damar Hamlin, who almost could have been seconds away from dying, is back out there doing the thing he loves, I'd be stunned to think that Tua Tagovailoa isn't back out there. And it's not to be inhumane. It's not to be not sympathetic to his cause and what he's going through today. And if he feels like it's not worth it and he steps away, then I'm good with that too. But knowing the way these guys are wired and how much they love this game and how barbaric a game it really is, I'd be surprised if he's not cleared, that he doesn't choose. As long as he chooses it, I'm not going to tell him what to do. I want him to do what he thinks is the best for his life, and it's going to find fulfillment for him. So scary to see those two guys involved in it again. But here they are. Damar Hamlin's back out there, and I'd be surprised if Tua's not back out there in some time.
Yeah, you can't make it up. Damar Hamlin with the collision there. And Tua, 26 years old, he led the NFL in passing yards last year. He's a young father. He's got a family to think about, children now. But I had Brett Favre on this program last week, Dave, and Brett Favre said that for most of his life, he thought that he'd had 3 or 4 concussions. He said, if you ask me, for during my career or shortly after my career was over, how many concussions did you have? He would have said 3 or maybe 4. He said the only time that he ever got knocked unconscious was his last game, the final game of his career. He hit his head on the frozen turf and in Minnesota when they were playing outdoors after the Metrodome had deflated.
Right.
I think it was. And that's the only time that he actually got KO'd completely. He now thinks that he's had possibly over 1,000 concussions because he's aware that any time that you see stars, that you get your bell rung in a way that you have visual distortions, that, it may not be the severest form, but that's brain trauma also. So a lot for Tua to think about here. There's no doubt about it. But Dave, I'm with you. I don't want to sit here as a complete stranger, as an outsider, and tell another man how to live his life, particularly somebody who is 26 years old, at the top of his profession, near the top of his profession. He's an upper echelon NFL quarterback. And to say, well, you can't do this anymore, go find something else to do. I'm in no position to do that, but I do think this is obviously something that he's going to have to sit down and discuss with his family and come to some type of a conclusion. Dave, I want to go to the poll of the day with you here. Okay. I'm excited about this because I've never gotten your perspective on a poll of the day. Let's take a look over at Super 70 Sports on X. Today is Championship Friday. So what we do, Dave, is
Oh,
I throw
man.
4 things out every day, and my goal is always to get a quadruple 25. I just try to throw out things that are good, and I just try to guess what the public might think, and I try to get it as close to a 4-horse race as I can. So on Fridays, we take the Monday through Thursday winners, and we pit them against each other to have the champion of the week. So, Dave, the winners this week, Run DMC, Twix, Yacht Rock, and Heather Locklear. So before we see who is faring the best in this election, give me your breakdown, Dave.
Okay, first of all, that you have free and fair elections on the Ricky Cobb show is fantastic. That's what America needs more of, okay? So, Ricky, we don't know each other well enough, but if you know me from back in the day, like Run DMC, that is near and dear to my heart. I probably know most lyrics to all of their songs. That's 80s hip hop to me. It's LL Cool J, it's Run DMC, it's New York City hip hop, right? So that's really part of who I am. And then you got Heather Locklear in there. I mean, what guy in the 80s didn't say, I'm in love with Heather Locklear at some point? I mean, she is kind of tip of the spear. Yacht Rock is an easy throw out for me. I get it that it's casual. It's songs we all know, probably know all the words to them as well. Against My Will, I'd probably add that when it comes to Yacht Rock. But that's going to be an easy toss out. The Twix is interesting because I love a good Twix, and you get the caramel and you get that kind of cookie coating inside the chocolate. So it's definitely way up there in the candy bar cartel, if you will. But I'm going to go vote right when we go to break. I'm going to lead the witness here. It's Run DMC. It's close over Heather Locklear. It's going to run away from Yacht Rock and Twix for me. I mean, I just love it's tricky. My Adidas, even though I didn't wear Adidas, I wore Nikes back in the day. Like all of their songs are they're just iconic to me. So it's going to be Jam Master Jay. It's going to be Run DMC. I think that's going to win your poll this week.
All right, so first of all, thank you for the Jam Master Jay shout out. I'm going with Yacht Rock. I've got, it's a wonder I don't have a captain's hat under my desk here, and it's Heather Locklear. And I'm being told by producer Tim, maybe don't Google her. Maybe just remember, like, particularly if you voted for her.
Oh, don't look now.
What we're saying is that if Twix was running a campaign ad, it might just be a photo of Heather Locklear now. But Twix obviously didn't do that, and they're getting run. The race here is between Yacht Rock and Run DMC, but Heather Locklear is the winner of the week, although I am told that maybe you might have better luck if you go to a Run DMC concert now, I guess is what is kind of the gist of it.
Well, the way we were,
let's take
Ricky, would the way we were be
go ahead, Dave.
A Yacht Rock? Would that be a Yacht Rock song? The way we were, and that would be Heather Locklear. Like you could kind of combine the two, right? You might hear that on some Yacht Rock because the way Heather Locklear was, if we're just remembering her in that era, then I can see why she's running away with your poll right now.
I'm the Yacht Rock playlist consultant is very concerned right now that you just pinned the way we were on us. That's not us. But that's not us. But a good reference. Nonetheless, let's see what I'm tweeting here. Throw it up, Tim. I said we live in a divided country. I understand that, but can't we all agree, regardless of one's personal beliefs, that the Mariners need to bring back their fucking relief pitcher boat? Dave, is there anything better than just looking up and some guy's coming out of the bullpen in this fucking thing like Judge Schmales?
Spalding, get your foot off the boat. That's as good as it gets, Ricky. And I got to be honest with you, I don't recall that. I don't remember the M's having a bullpen boat to bring the guys up. Like I think of the old the Cars, right, with the giant like Mr. Met coming out there and like those things are fantastic in the 70s and 80s when they come out of the bullpen and like they were so lazy. Think about that. Baseball players were so lazy. They couldn't even run out of the bullpen. They had to be carted out of the bullpen in just extravagant things. That is fantastic. And I'm with you. The M's, you got to bring that back, baby. How do you not bring that back? And Caddyshack, by the way, every scene that Ted Knight was in, I know Rodney stole it and everybody's got their favorites. I'm not kidding you, Ricky. Every scene that Ted Knight is in, he can make me laugh with his facial expressions. He was unreal as Judge Schmales.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ted Knight, I've said it before, Ted Knight, and this is one of the greatest ensemble comedies of all time, Caddyshack.
Yes.
But, man, that's Ted Knight's movie. He walked in there, and in my opinion, he stole that movie.
Yes.
He made it, and that takes talent. When you got Bill Murray and Chevy Chase and Rodney Dangerfield and all of these guys, and you walk in there and you say, you know what? This is kind of my movie. That is a talent. So Sky Point to the great Ted Knight, who is
absolutely
one of the legends of comedy. Great observation, Dave. All right, well, when we come back from this break, I am going to be joined by the former WCW World Heavyweight Champion. He's a WWE Hall of Famer. The great Double J, Jeff Jarrett, will join me right after this on the Ricky Cobb Show.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.